How you doing? This is Vince Vaughn. No.
It's Sylvester Stallone.
No, it's Mark Wahlberg. No. It's Tom Hanks. No. Unfortunately, it's me, Johnno Wilson. I'm hanging with Elias in the man cave, and I am just ready to chat it up, man.
Perfect. Johnno, welcome to the cave.
Thank you for inviting me. It's beautiful down here.
It was we were chatting off the air, and it was we were talking about like we're both from Massachusetts, man. But it was like you've been busy for a few years now.
Yeah, it's been all right. It's been all right. Yeah.
The listeners and the viewers, I've seen you on TikTok. You're huge on there. Your impressions, you've done Disney shows. You got a role come up on Curb, I heard.
Yes, I do. Which
and,
was crazy.
And so you've been busy in the industry around like 10 years now or so?
Yeah, I moved to LA about 10 years ago now. I actually was working as a consultant in health and benefits before that, like out of college. And one of my best friends from growing up had moved out here to be a screenwriter, and he was like, his name's Pete Wood. He's like the smartest guy I've ever met in my life. And he just was kind of like living his life doing what he wanted to do. Like he worked in pharmaceuticals, and then he like moved to Paris to write short stories. And then one of his best friends from Harvard had moved out to LA and was like, let's try to write screenplays together. And so he contacted me while I was consulting and was like, why don't you we've always talked about doing this. Why don't you move out? And I was like, I'm there.
So you just got up and quit your job?
I quit my job. I told my parents, like, hey, I'm kind of thinking about this. And I was doing some stuff on the side of the job, but I told my parents, listen, I'm thinking about doing this. Pete has moved out there, and my parents and my brother were like, yeah, we've always thought you should do something like this, but we weren't going to nudge you. We were just going to, if you found it on your own, great. If you didn't, you'd be a fine consultant,
It's not like you can't do that in California too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, listen, my dad was like, take the business school boards, like the GMATs before leaving, which I did well on. I did well on those. But yeah, they were like, go for it. And so that was about 10 years ago.
So like, growing up in Massachusetts, we mentioned that off the air. Like, did you like how did you find your love for like comedy? Like, and what was the path before all this?
I mean, listen, like I've read a lot of books about comedians, and like the Live from New York book and Chris Farley's biography. And everybody kind of has a similar story, and mine's not much different. Like I grew up just watching reruns of stuff on Comedy Central. I would watch the reruns of SNL when it was Sandler and Farley and Spade and Schneider and Chris Rock and all of those, and Phil Hartman and Dana Carvey. And then I just vividly remember watching stand-up by Sinbad, Dana Carvey, and Paula Poundstone were like my favorite stand-ups when I was like 10 years old. And I would just watch them and laugh. And I just loved it so much. And so I started, after watching Dana Carvey and watching Aladdin, so I was like 10 years old or something, I would like draw cartoons of celebrities' faces, and then watching Dana Carvey and doing the voices. Like I started doing like a Jimmy Stewart impression when I was like 10 years old. I didn't know who Jimmy Stewart was, but I'm walking into the kitchen and being like, well, hey mom, when's dinner ready? And she'd be like, what is going on? So it was just like it was always there, and it was always just a fun thing for me,
You mentioned you're probably like 10, maybe even 15 years younger than me. I'm 44. I don't know how old you are, but
I'm 36.
All right. So like when you were mentioning like those reruns and everything, I remember skipping college with my friends just to like grab lunch and bring it back to the dorms or the apartment and just watch the reruns of that stuff. Oh, the 90s was a great time for comedy.
It was a great time. And then like you're coming into like in real time on SNL, it was like Molly Shannon and Will Ferrell and Sherry O'Terry and all those people. So it was like comedy was just really, and at the same time, it's like Jim Carrey is having his year of doing The Mask and Ace Ventura and Cable Guy or Dumb and Dumber, and you've got Happy Gilmore, and all of that stuff is happening all around the same time. So I think all of that was influencing me growing up.
I mentioned the 90s. How much you think has comedy changed between now, like between the 90s and now? And even like with SNL, like what's your feeling about all that?
Listen, I think people are definitely more sensitive. A lot of like they're not going to be as many jokes that are meant to make you go, oh, but kind of laugh at the same time. Like people aren't going to be making those jokes as much anymore. Or the majority of comedians won't. I think some still will. And frankly, like I feel like they're still kind of working. I think my biggest thing is authenticity. If you're being authentic and you're not making a joke to just hurt people's feelings or alienate people, if you're doing it because you have some experience with it, then it's going to come off as being genuine. Even if it is offensive to some people, the people who it's offensive to will still laugh, you know? Yeah. So that's my thing. I mean, like my type of comedy is not political. It's not making a social commentary. It's just like Mark Wahlberg having a sleepover. You know what I mean? It's like simple, stupid, silly stuff.
Old school comedy. That's what it is. It's like, because like you mentioned, like in the 90s, like I used to, I mean, I still go and see stand-up, but back then I used to go see like Dane Cook, Jim Brewer. Like it was hot back then, you know, like
I know a lot of people are saying I feel like a lot of big comedians are being like, I'm not doing colleges anymore. However, you have to also wonder if it's because they don't want to be put up in South Bend, Indiana in some crappy hotel, you know, when they like could do Madison Square Garden, you know what I mean? So
yeah, but I've had other comedians on it. They love hitting like those places.
I would love doing it. Honestly, like I think it would be a blast. But again, I'm not Bill Maher. I'm not doing political commentary on stuff, you know?
So was the goal at first like stand up? Cause I know you've done improv also, like, or you do a little bit of both.
No, the goal, it was really like, I did a lot with the Groundlings. Like I did the Sunday company at the Groundlings for a year and a half and did that program for God, a good 7 years, maybe. And it was really like the SNL stuff. I always loved stand up, but I didn't think it was like really me. Like I didn't feel as though I was a person that wrote a punchline for a joke and would hit it with the rhythm. I always felt like I thrived when it was more like, you know, not to sound like conceited or anything, but like, it's more like jazz for me when anything can change. And then every time I can be everything can be more fresh for me. Like I find it difficult to tell a joke over and over again and keep it fresh, which great stand-up comedians do. And I'm like blown away by.
Have you ever thought about doing stand-up?
I've done stand-up. I've done stand-up a bunch, but it's also like a grind. It kind of is like when you're out here, you choose a path. It's either like you're at the club every night doing stand-up and then meeting people and getting spots, or you spend 7 years at the Groundlings and study writing and characters and that side. And I went the Groundlings way, although I love doing stand-up. I'm more of like a storyteller stand-up, more in the vein of like a Mike Birbiglia meets Dana Carvey, because I'll do impressions, but I also more tell stories that like make my friends laugh when I tell them, you know.
You mentioned the Groundlings. I had Matt Cook on before. Have you worked with him, or Alex Bonifer?
Alex is a buddy of mine. Matt Cook was my director for the last 6 months that I was in the Groundlings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So know both those guys.
Yeah. So I did, when I was doing a little research, I saw that you tried out, I guess, would you say, for SNL twice?
Yeah, they flew me out. It was what's called a network test, which means you sign a contract. It's after you've done like a showcase for them. You sign a contract and do all that stuff, and then they fly you out to New York, and you do the thing that all the greats who have been on that show and all the greats who haven't been on that show do, and you wait in your dressing room. You go through hair and makeup, and then you go out on the Studio 8H stage and do 5 to 7 minutes for Lauren and the writers and producers. And it was like, so yeah, I did that twice, and it was, I mean, it's surreal. You try to like live in the moment and be like, wow, look at the pictures on the wall. I can't really remember
Yeah.
what I was feeling and thinking. It was just like a whirlwind. I just remember after the first test, I was like, I'm going to be on the show. I crushed it. I felt so good about it.
Wow.
And then the second test, one of my characters really fell flat. It was a gremlin at an HOA meeting. And I don't know if that was really their style.
So when you do those tests, like, do they tell you right away, or do you get like how do they tell you like you didn't get it or anything like that, or like,
no,
we'll see you again, or because you got 2 calls, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of mystery around it. I don't think the people at SNL, I mean, everyone was so nice to me. And like one of the casting people, I think the head casting person, Lindsay Shookus, was like so nice to me. And some of the stage managers were really, really kind and made me feel very comfortable. But when it comes to hearing back, it's kind of like you either get a call a week, 2 weeks later, and they say, we want you to have a meeting with one of the higher ups at SNL, or you kind of just don't hear.
Okay.
And I've heard, and who knows if this is the truth or not, but I've heard that like, if you don't hear anything, or if they say like, yeah, keep sending tapes and keep in contact with us, then it's like never over. I've heard that like, they will say to some people, like, it's not happening, so.
Yeah. How long ago was that?
That was like 3 years ago now, I think. Yeah.
Are you still sending tapes in? Maybe you get another bite.
This year is the first year that I didn't send a tape in. I did the last 2 years, and last year was kind of tough. My representation was like, figuring out the pandemic and what to do. And I'm not sure exactly how they went about everything, but I was really proud about the stuff that I sent in the last 2 years. And I'll just tell you, like, as a, candidly, as a sketch comedian for the most part, when you're coming into this time of year right now that we're in, and everybody's sending tapes in, and you're thinking, what is fresh and what's my brand of comedy, but also like current, and you're putting together a tape and then you send it in, you're kind of stressed the whole summer, being like, I wonder if they're watching it. I wonder what they think. I wonder. And to be honest with you, I'm like, I'm having so much fun on TikTok. That's like keeping me really creative and coming up with all these different impressions and stuff. And I think everything that I've sent them in the last 2 years, and then when I went in person, I don't think I have characters that are that different or gonna be like, make them be like, this is something we've never seen Johnno do. So I'm like, I don't think that this is the year for me to send another tape. And I would only send something in if I was like, this stuff is better than the stuff that I sent you last year.
So you mentioned the pandemic, like everything got, the whole world pretty much shut down. Like, how did you keep busy? Like, what did you do for work and things like that?
I mean, honestly, I was really lucky during the pandemic. I still shot a couple episodes of the Disney show Raven's Home. One of my best friends out here, Teddy Bressman, was doing a animated show on Sci-Fi, and I voiced like 6 or 7 roles on that. I booked this at&t commercial. Like, I actually was still kind of busy working. But other than that, I was like, I just have to, at first I kind of enjoyed being shut in. It's like, gives you excuse to just kind of not have to do anything,
re-energize a little bit.
Yeah, re-energize, because every day in this industry, it's like something huge could happen today, or literally nothing could happen today. Yeah. So when everything was shut down, I was like, nothing's happening. I can kind of just chill. I played a lot of golf. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, like, you've worked on a couple, TV shows. You also did that Amazon show with your buddy there.
Yeah.
And people would
try.
I was asked to ask you, are we going to get a season 2 or what?
So we actually just pitched the show to a couple production companies. Because we were saying we want to make this show, but we would love to have a production company team up with us, and then we'd love to sell it to, like, a network or whatever, or a studio. And we didn't get any bites on that. But I could totally see us making more. I mean, Michael and I are also writing a feature right now that we'll try to pitch, but if we don't get any bites, I think we'll just make it ourselves and either release it on YouTube or try to get it on Amazon Prime or something like that. But, you know, that really came out of not getting SNL. We both didn't get SNL and we were like, well, what can we do? Let's just put something out every single week that is our brand of humor that will keep our creative juices going, and let's just see what happens. And then Funny or Die picked it up, and it was a great run. But I don't want to say that it's over. I don't want to say that.
So I mean, like I said, I was told to ask you, you know, that people are like, oh man, I used to love to go on Funny or Die and YouTube to watch it. And it's like, we got to get more.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
So we mentioned, you know, you do a lot of like celebrity impressions. Like, so did you work on new impressions like while the pandemic was going on, or like, how do you even learn how to do this stuff?
Well, I think it's almost like a language, in my opinion. Like if you're young and you're learning a different language, it's just like second nature. So I was watching Dana Carvey as an 8-year-old and doing Jimmy Stewart, you know, like I think it just kind of was in, and then I would carpool to school with my friends and I'd be doing impressions of all of our teachers. It was just finding one little thing and doing it. Like during the pandemic, I was hanging out with my girlfriend and Mr. and Mrs. Smith was on, which is, you don't think of that as a Vince Vaughn movie, but Vince Vaughn's in it. And the whole time he's just talking to Brad Pitt and being like, I mean, I got to tell you, you got to get out. You got to get out. Angie's going to kill you. And you got to get out of her way or I'll kill her right now. And I was like, whoa, this is how and I just started sitting there going like, just started doing it. Yeah. It just kind of comes like that. Like I started doing Matthew McConaughey because I was randomly watching A Time to Kill and I was getting annoyed because the entire time he was just saying his S's like this. And I was like, I can't believe how much he's whistling those S's. And it was just like bothering me. And that's how I started doing that. So they all just come randomly. Like Mark Wahlberg didn't come from anything. I was literally just like hanging out and I was like, I just thought of him saying, shut up. And his eyebrows being, shut up. And I was like, what if he was doing a sleepover? Shut up. My parents are going to get pissed. Stop talking so loud. You're not going to be able to sleep over here again. Donnie, tell him, you know, like it just comes randomly. And I think that's when the most creative stuff comes, when you're not trying to come up with something.
You mentioned your girlfriend. Does she get annoyed with the impressions?
No, she likes them. But I will tell you, like, I'll film one on TikTok and I'll like put it in my draft folder and I'll be like, hey, Annalisa, check this out. And I'll show it to her. And there have been times where she like laughs and she's like, that's so funny. And then there are other times where she'll just kind of go, no,
don't do it.
No. And then of course, as a defensive like actor, a comedian, I'm like, you just don't get it. The TikTok people will get it, you know?
Do you ever mess with people with the impressions? Like if somebody like one of the spam callers or anything like that? Or
I haven't yet, but I really should. I really want to go to like a drive-in and just order as Vince Vaughn and see if they know, or like call up Spago in LA and be like, how you doing, my man? I really need a table for tomorrow at 8:00. You know,
and then show up and see if they're waiting for Vince Vaughn to show.
Put it under Vaughn, you know? Yeah. And then just walk in and be like, it was me. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it is. It was me, my man. You know.
What's your favorite impression? And what was the hardest one to learn?
God. It ebbs and flows. And honestly, there hasn't really been one that's been hard to learn, because the way that I come up with impressions is like, I don't really work on them. It's more like I hear someone and I start doing it in my car, or like, you know, I was just like playing golf by myself once and I started just going, oh, Wilson. Oh no. And I was like, that's Tom Hanks. And then I just do it a bunch and it would really, like, I know where it lives in my throat. But yeah, it ebbs and flows which one's my favorite one. You know, I go on runs of like, Tom Hanks is my favorite, Mark Wahlberg is my favorite, Stallone is my favorite. You know, it changes all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We also, tell us about the show we were talking about earlier, the First Impressions. If the listeners or the viewers don't remember, it was a show on USA.
Yeah, it was a show on USA that was hosted by Dana Carvey. I was on the episode with, or I'm sorry, it was hosted more by Freddie Prinze Jr. and Dana Carvey was the main guy there. And my episode was with Tom Arnold, and that was like the first time I had done a show where I was doing impressions. Like I hadn't had a Tom Hanks yet. I hadn't done, Vince Vaughn or any of the newer ones, but it was another surreal experience to be in front of an audience, including Dana Carvey, and doing impressions. And I remember like backstage at one point, I did this thing where I was doing Sylvester Stallone accepting an award, and it just kind of came to me in the moment that he's just always kind of punching. And as I was punching, I felt my body kind of move, and I ended up with my back to the audience, and Dana Carvey came over and like turned me back around, and I was like, where am I? And and afterwards, Dana Carvey was like backstage with me, and he was like, I just loved your take on Stallone. And I was like, this is surreal, man. Like I grew up watching you and Paula Poundstone and Sinbad. And he was like, oh, Paula's a good friend of mine. I was like, I can't believe this conversation's happening right now. But I was very happy with how I did on that show.
How did you even get on that show? Was it pretty much the same thing, like a tryout, or did you have to like send a demo in? Okay.
It was an audition. And honestly, that audition, now that I'm thinking about it, really informed the way I started to do impressions, because I remember I came in and started doing some of my impressions, but I didn't have any really like bits written. Okay. And then whoever was in the casting room was like, okay, could you do Matthew McConaughey as a 911 operator? And then because I had been doing improv, I kind of combined that with the impressions, and I was just like, what's your emergency? All right, we're going to send an ambulance your way. You're going to be all right. And things started to click. And then that's what I do on TikTok now. That's what I would do in my stand-up. I would just make up these silly scenarios where the celebrities would never really be. And that kind of was how I found the funny in them.
Wow. Is there a voice that you're working on now, but it's not like there yet? Were you like still working on?
I've been listening to the Smartless podcast, those guys. And so I've been working on a Jason Bateman.
That's awesome.
It's just like, I was just like in my car, and he's just always kind of he's kind of like in the back of the neck, and we're gonna have to work on that. He's a little up there kind of. So that is one that I'll listen to that podcast, and I'll just kind of say back things that he'll say on the podcast, and it'll get there. He seems like a very mellow guy. Totally. Yeah. He seems so cool to be able to last this long in an industry this crazy, and to seem like a pretty normal, good dude, at least. And I'm sure he is a testament to
that he doesn't age.
Yeah. Not head of hair. Give me a break.
Yeah. Because I just started watching oh my god, what was that show he had on Fox there? I just started watching it again.
Oh my
for the
god.
beginning, and I'm like, I love this show.
It's so good. Yeah.
So what's next for you? Any projects that you can tell the listeners and the viewers?
I'm working on this this feature film, writing it. It's in its beginning stages. We've got basically an outline of it, and we'll start writing it soon and get some feedback from friends who are writers in the industry before we really dive in. And I believe the episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm that I'll be on is next season finale. Okay. And that was a real, again, a surreal experience.
Please tell me you have a scene with Larry David.
Yes. Yeah. It'll be great. It was really an amazing experience. And hopefully a few other things will come down the pike soon. We'll see.
John, lastly, so for the listeners, the viewers, how can they find you on social media?
Well, you can find me everywhere. It's just Johnno Wilson. It's 2 N's, JOHNNO Wilson. on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all of that.
Is your favorite platform TikTok or
Instagram? Favorite platform, yeah. Instagram's coming around. They're coming around. Yeah. But TikTok has been the most fun lately. Yeah.
Real quick, show the viewers your shirt, because I mean, we got to represent.
Gotta represent.
What do you think of this season coming up?
Man, I don't know. I don't know. Is Cam our guy again?
It sounds like it.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I'll always support the Pats. Love the Pats, but happy Tom and Rob got theirs last season, but we'll see what happens this season.
We'll get there again. I think we'll get there again
for sure. I'm not worried about that.
Johnno, man, this was great. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, man.